This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, website, or online store, make it with Squarespace.
Hey. No. I can't come out tonight. Yeah, I'm still working at this summer camp, and I have to stay here, apparently, and make sure our boats don't get stolen, because everyone wants our canoes. Yeah, I'll call you back.
I think this girl just threw a knife at me. I'm just out here trying to get B-roll for my Halloween video, and I get a whole ass knife thrown at me. She's still there? No, I think she left. We good. Look at that. A whole ass knife. Okay, I actually gotta go. This is an aerosol spray, so it's only gonna stay in the air back there for like 30 seconds, but that's long enough for me to let you know that since today is Halloween, I'm gonna be showing you how to give your videos that like classic horror movie look. And I wanna make it abundantly clear that this isn't a tutorial on how to make a great horror movie or even just how to make a horror film. It's just a video about how to give your videos that certain like cinematic horror movie aesthetic. That being said, let's just give this fog a minute to kind of settle, and then we can get into the tutorial. The basic goal when you're filming a sequence like this is to make the viewer feel unsafe, which starts with your setting. You want to pick a location that's remote, but that also has a lot of places for things to hide, like trees and bushes, and darkness also helps. I've also found that texture is a big factor here. If you want to get a really scary look, you can find a location that has a lot of gritty textures, not very smooth, clinical looking surfaces. A great way to add some extra texture to any location is by using fog. It's a trademark of classic horror films, but it can be pretty tricky to pull off. You can sometimes have naturally occurring fog, but it's oftentimes seasonal and just in general rare, in addition to lasting a very short amount of time and not being very consistent. You could use a fog machine, but if you're like most people, including me, and don't just keep a fog machine around, you can use this really nifty product called Atmosphere Aerosol. It's basically just an aerosol can that allows you to spray artificial fog into your location. The advantage of this over an actual fog machine is that it's obviously a lot cheaper, but it's also a lot smaller, so you can carry this around in your camera bag. Atmosphere Aerosol doesn't have any affiliation with this video, it's just a really nifty product that I've used for a while now. The other great thing about fog is that it carries light through your scene, which gives you a lot more flexibility to go for different looks with lighting. If you're going for this look, the lighting should definitely be pretty dark, but not so dark that you can't see what's going on. A good lighting setup to use for this is kind of a moonlit look. This is going to give your scene enough light that everyone can see what's going on, but it's also going to very strongly imply that it's nighttime. Another lighting technique you can try using is backlighting. Having that light directly behind your subject is going to give you a very dark overall look, but you're still going to have defined shapes in your shot. And of course, when used in the right situation, this makes your subject look a lot more mysterious. Another great way to add some more mystery to your footage is by shooting with a longer focal length, like 50 or 85 millimeters. This is obviously going to give you a more zoomed in image, so you're going to limit the amount of that scene that your viewer can actually see, and it also compresses the space in your scene, giving your viewer a kind of claustrophobic feeling. My favorite thing about shooting with a longer focal length is that it allows you to take advantage of foreground elements, where you shoot with something blurry right in front of the lens. This contributes even more to that claustrophobic feeling and also makes it feel as if the character is being watched. Including these elements in the foreground gives us a camera angle where it's almost as if we're seeing the point of view of whatever ghost or werewolf is in your scene. And that brings me to the two different kinds of camera angles you're going to want to use in this, and that's the point of view of the quote-unquote monster in your scene and the point of view of your character. And by the point of view of the character, I don't necessarily mean shots where we're seeing exactly what your character's eyes are actually seeing at that moment. I just mean clips where the camera follows your character through the scene. For those scenes where the camera is following the character through the scene, it's best to use very slow, steady camera motion in order to build suspense. But once you get to the climax of the scene, you can contrast that with much faster, shakier motion. Now that we've gone over a few techniques to help film these sequences, I want to show you some ways to actually edit the footage. But before that, I want to take a quick second to talk about Squarespace, which is of course the sponsor of today's video. Currently, we're at the climax of the Halloween season, but no matter what time of year it is, one of the scariest things to think about is just websites. All that coding and problems and coding. Sounds like a nightmare. Luckily, Squarespace makes it incredibly easy to create a new website, portfolio, or online store, or even transfer a third-party domain. It's an all-in-one platform with nothing to install, patch, or upgrade, and if you still manage to mess something up, Squarespace has award-winning 24/7 customer service to help you get back on track. You can also use Squarespace's designer templates to make your site look amazing no matter what kind of aesthetic you're going for. So whether you're making a new website to showcase your brand, a portfolio to display your work, or even an online store to sell your merch, your LUTs, your presets, whatever you're making, I'm sure it's incredible, and your site will be too if you make it with Squarespace. So go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Aidin to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now let's talk a bit about how you can edit your horror scenes, and the most basic but also arguably most important factor here is pacing. You want the viewer to be genuinely invested in this really gripping scene, so it's good to use a lot of long shots to really build up that suspense, and it's also important to realize that a badly placed cut is really going to take the viewer out of the scene and out of the moment. In a scene like this, sound design is incredibly important, and in my opinion, the absolute best way to build up suspense in your scene, to really get your viewer invested and get them all the way on the edge of their seats, is by using atmospheric sound design. I actually made a tutorial about 2 weeks ago that was all about atmospheric sound design, so you can check that out by clicking right here. But atmospheric sound design is basically all of the abstract background noise that you hear in horror movies. It really helps to build up suspense and build the mood. Those techniques are helpful and great for building suspense, but also use silence to your advantage, because there's nothing more suspenseful than those parts of the movie where everything goes quiet and you're just waiting for what's about to happen. One final really nifty audio technique I wanted to include in this is to adjust the right and left levels of your audio separately. This way, if someone's wearing headphones when they watch your video, you're able to control whether they hear it in their left ear or in their right or somewhere in between. This is basically a less advanced, less effective version of surround sound, but you'd be surprised how much of an effect it can have during a horror scene to just hear something creepy circling around you or hear different sounds off to the left or off to the right. It definitely helps to place the viewer in the scene. And finally, let's finish this video off by talking a bit about color grading. For this kind of aesthetic, you basically just want to go for a very dark, desaturated look. The way I do this is by applying curves to my clip, using that to darken it and add some contrast, and then following that curves effect up with a hue, saturation, and lightness adjustment, which allows me to desaturate most of the clip, but especially the green. Obviously, like anything else in this video, color grading is completely up to you, but I have found this dark desaturated look to be the most effective for this style. You can also try adding a vignette to your clip, which darkens the edges but not the middle of the frame. So it's a great way to darken your scene overall without necessarily making your subject less well lit. Another subtle adjustment you can use is to add some film grain to your clip, which just helps to give your footage that gritty texture we talked about earlier. And one grading style that can be extremely helpful for horror films is day for night, where you shoot footage during the day and then color grade it to make it look like it's nighttime. This technique only works and only looks good on footage that has no overexposed completely white highlights. When you're filming, you can enable your camera's highlight peaking display to make sure, but the best way to do this is just to shoot in overcast weather or in a shady area. Just avoid direct sunlight. In its simplest form, day for night color correction just involves darkening your footage a bit and giving it a bluish tint. But a few days from now, I'm gonna post a tutorial all about day for night effects, including not just the color correction, but some more advanced effects. No matter what techniques you use, the most important thing is just to be creative. There are so many different styles of horror films, and this is just one of them. That being said, I do hope that you've enjoyed this video or learned something from it, and if you did, do feel free to share your support by leaving a like on the video, sharing it with your friends, or even subscribing to my channel. I upload 2 new filmmaking tutorials every single week. But that's all for now. Keep creating, have a great Halloween, and I'll see you